Hello Year 5s, Miss Everatt here, back again for another reading session. I'm in school today. I'm hidden away in a little room to come and do this with you. But I just wanted to say firstly how lovely it has been to see those of you who've been back in school. I know some of you have said hello across the playground and we've had some chats, and it's been really lovely getting to know you all better and putting names to faces and things. So if you are in school and you haven't said hello yet, make sure you do. And those of you at home still, it's still lovely to get your emails. I want to see more because they really help me just feel connected to you guys and get to know you and make sure you're all doing okay. So make sure you keep them coming in. So I thought we would get started on some more clockwork. My hair's a bit crazy today because it's a very windy day. What's it that Winnie the Pooh said? It's a very blustery day, something like that. And I've been out on the playground and everything, so very windy. Anyway, so yeah, let's get on with clockwork, shall we? Because we have still got lots to find out. Let's see, where did we get up to? So I think that things are starting to come to life. Okay. Perhaps if I have another drink, he said. He poured some more brandy, splashing most of it on the counter, before he got some in the glass. He swallowed it quickly. That's better. Well, after all, I could put him in the clock, and if I bolted him to the frame, he'd be safe enough. He wouldn't be able to get out of that, no matter what words anyone said. Oh yeah, because it's this little figure, and it's the word devil. When you say this word, he starts trying to kill the person who said the word because he's got, I think it was a sword, wasn't it? Okay, so that's where we're at. He looked around him fearfully. The parlour was as silent as the grave. Then he lifted the curtain and peered through the window, but there was not a single light in the town square. Everyone in the world seemed to have gone to bed, and the only beings awake were the clockmaker's apprentice and the little silvery figure with the sword. Yes, I'll do it, he said. So he threw the canvas over Sir Ironsoul hastily, pulled his coat and hat, and hurried out to unlock the tower and prepare the clock. Now, as it happened, there was one other person awake, and that was Gretel, the landlord's little daughter. She couldn't sleep at all, and the reason for that was Fritz's story. There was one thing she couldn't get out of her mind. It wasn't the clockwork in the dead prince's breast. It wasn't the horses foaming with terror or the dead driver behind them. It was the young Prince Florian. She thought, poor little boy, to travel home in that frightful way. She tried to imagine what terrors he must have faced, alone in the sledge with his dead father, and she shivered under her blankets and wished she should comfort him. And because she couldn't sleep, she thought she'd go down and sit by the stove in the parlour for a while, because her bed was so cold. So she wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and tiptoed down the stairs, just as the great clock in the tower was chiming midnight. There was no one in the parlour, of course, and the lamp was burning low, so she didn't notice the little canvas-covered figure in the corner, and sat down to warm her hands at the stove. What a strange story that was going to be, she said to herself. I'm not sure that people ought to tell stories like that. I don't mind ghosts and skeletons, but I think Fritz went too far that time. And didn't everyone jump when the old man came in? It was as if Fritz conjured him up out of nothing, like Dr. Faust conjuring up the devil. And the sheet of the canvas fell softly to the floor, and the little metal figure turned his head and raised his sword and began to move towards her. Now, before we move on to the next page, I've got a couple of these illustrations. So here I've got a little... Oh no, Gretel, be careful, stop, don't say it. Too late. And it's got a little picture of the figure, Sir Ironsoul. On this page, it's got a lovely, beautiful illustration. I don't know if you're familiar with this type of artwork, but there's lots of lines that go one way and then lines that go over the top in the other way, which is called hatching or cross hatching. And I'll show you, it's Gretel warming herself up. And it says, Gretel was kind-hearted, you see. Her heart was in the right place. Her heart was warm. Her heart was tender. She had a heart of gold. You know those expressions. There are some people like Gretel who can't hear of anyone else's problems without suffering almost as much as they do. The world is a cruel place sometimes, and warm-hearted people do most of the good in it. And much of the time, they're mocked and scorned for their pains. Interesting. Okay, let's see what happens. Oh, that's the end of part 1. So now we're on to part 2 of the book. So this is quite significant, I think. When Prince Otto married his Princess Mariposa, the whole city rejoiced. Fireworks were lit in the public gardens. Bands played all night in the ballrooms, and flags and banners waved from every rooftop. At last we'll have an heir, the people said, for they had been afraid that the dynasty would come to an end. But time went by and more time, and no child came to Prince Otto and Princess Mariposa. They sought the opinions of the finest doctors, but still no child came. They made a pilgrimage to Rome to seek the blessings of the Holy Father, but still no child came. Finally, as Princess Mariposa stood at the palace window, she heard the chiming of the cathedral clock and said, I wish I had a child as sound as a bell and as true as a clock. And when she had said those words, she felt her heart lift. And before the year was out, she did have a child. But alas, for her and for everyone, her labour was hard and painful. And when the baby had taken one breath in this world, he could take no more. And he died in the arms of the nurse. Princess Mariposa knew nothing of that, for she was in a dreadful swoon, and no one could say whether she would live or die. As for Prince Otto, he was nearly out of his mind with fury. He snatched a dead child from the nurse's arms and said, I will have an heir, come what may. He ran down to the stables and ordered the grooms to saddle his fastest horse with the dead child clasped to his breast. He galloped away. And we have got another illustration before I move on. I think this must be the princess because she looks very fancy. So you can see she's got her big fancy gown on, her hair all done up, and some people helping her get ready, it looks like. And it says, the princess was called Mariposa. She was very beautiful, but what princess isn't? Being beautiful is their profession. Princess Mariposa spent most of her time shopping. The dress designers let her buy dresses at half price because she wore them at fashionable parties and made the designers famous. If you want to buy things cheap, it helps to be rich. Strange as it seems. Poor people always have to pay the full price. And that's true, even still today. Celebrities get all this free stuff for the publicity. Okay, so what happens next? Where was he going? North, and further north, until he came to the workshop of Dr. Comenius, near the silver mines of Scatsburg. There it was that the great clockwork maker created his wonders, from the celestial clocks that told the position of every planet for the next 25,000 years, to the little figures that danced and rode miniature ponies and shot tiny arrows and played the harpsichord. Well, said Dr. Comenius. Prince Otto stood in his riding cloak, with the snow still white on his shoulders, and held out the body of his child. Make me another child, he said. My son is dead, and his mother lies between life and death. Dr. Comenius, I command you to make me a child of clockwork who will not die. Even Prince Otto in his madness didn't believe that a clockwork toy could resemble a living child. But the silver they mined in Scatsburg was not the same as other metals. It was malleable and soft and lustrous, with a bloom on it like that on a butterfly's wing. And as for the great clockwork maker, the task was a challenge to his artistry that he couldn't resist. And so, while Prince Otto buried the dead child, Dr. Comenius set to work to make the new one. He smelt the ore and refined the silver. He smelted the ore and refined the silver and beat it into subtle thinness. He spun gold into filaments finer than spider's silk and attached each one separately to the little head. He cast and filed and tempered. He soldered and riveted and bolted. He timed and adjusted and regulated until the little mainspring was tight and the little escapement on its jewelled bearings was ticking back and forth with perfect accuracy. When the Clockwork Child was ready, Dr. Comenius gave him to Prince Otto, who scrutinised him carefully. The baby was breathing and moving and smiling, and even, by some secret art, warm. In every way, he looked exactly like the child who had died. Prince Otto wrapped his cloak around the baby and rode back to the palace, where he laid the child in the arms of Princess Mariposa. And the princess opened her eyes, and the joy of seeing her own child, as she thought, alive and well, brought her back from the brink of the grave. And besides, she looked so pretty with the child in her arms. She had always known she would. They named him Florian. A year went by, 2 years, 3, and the little boy grew up, beloved by everyone, happy and sturdy and clever. Prince Otto took him riding on a little pony, taught him to shoot a bow and arrow. He danced, he picked out tunes on the harpsichord, he grew stronger and bigger, more merry and lively all the time. But in the 5th year of his life, the little prince began to show signs of a disturbing illness. There was a painful stiffness in his joints. He had a constant feeling of chill, and his face, which was normally so lively and expressive, was becoming mask-like and rigid. Princess Mariposa was worried to distraction, for he no longer looked nearly so handsome next to her. "Can't you do something to cure him?" she demanded of the royal physician. The physician taped the boy's chest and looked at his tongue and felt his pulse. It was like no disease he had ever seen. If he hadn't known the prince was a little boy, he'd have said he was seizing up like a rusty clock. But he could hardly say that to Princess Mariposa. "Nothing to worry about," he said. "It's a condition known as inflammatory oxidosis. Give him 2 spoonfuls of cod liver oil 3 times a day and rub his chest with the oil of lavender." And we have another little box here that says, "That's a typical doctor's answer. He makes up a medical sounding name, all oxidosis means is rusty disease, and prescribes some medicine that at least won't do any harm. That's one of the first things they teach them in medical school, or it used to be. But the royal physician had a very good bedside manner, and even if he didn't know how to cure his patients all the time, he soothed and flattered them beautifully." Interesting. Okay. The only one to suspect the truth was his father. And so Prince Otto set off once again for the mines of Scatsburg and knocked at the door of Dr. Comenius's workshop. "Well," said the clockwork maker. "Prince Florian is ill," said Prince Otto. "What can we do?" He described the symptoms, and Dr. Comenius shrugged his shoulders. "It's in the nature of clockwork to run down," was the answer. "His mainspring was bound to weaken, his escapement to become clogged with dust. I can tell you what will happen next. His skin will stiffen and crack and split from top to bottom to reveal nothing but dead, seized up metal inside him. He will never work again." "But why didn't you tell me this would happen?" "You were in such a hurry that you didn't ask." "Well, can't you just wind him up?" "Impossible." "But what can we do?" said Prince Otto in his rage and despair. "Is there nothing that can save his life? I must have an heir. The survival of the royal family depends on it." "There is one thing," said Dr. Comenius. "He is failing because he has no heart. Find him a heart and he will live. But I don't know where you'll find a heart in good condition that its owner is willing to part with. Besides," but Prince Otto had left already. He didn't stop to hear the rest of what Dr. Calmenius was going to say. That's often the way with princes. They want instant solutions, not difficult ones that take time and care to bring about. What the great clockwork maker had been going to say was, the heart that is given must also be kept. But quite possibly, Prince Otto wouldn't have understood anyway. He rode back to the palace, turning the problem over in his mind. And what a dilemma. To save his son, he had to sacrifice another human being. What could he do? And whom could he ask to make such a sacrifice? And then he thought of the Baron Stelgratz. Of course, there was no one better. Baron Stelgratz was old, trusted. He was an advisor, a staunch friend, faithful, brave and true. The little prince loved him, and he and the Baron used to play for hours at mock battles with Prince Florian's toy soldiers, and the good old nobleman would teach him how to handle a sword or fire a pistol and tell him all about the animals of the forest. The more Prince Otto thought about it, the better a choice it seemed. Baron Stelgratz would leap at the chance to give his heart for the family. Better not tell him yet, though. Better wait till they were at Dr. Calmenius's workshop. Then he would see the necessity quite clearly. When Prince Otto arrived back at the palace, he found that the little prince had gotten worse. He could hardly walk without falling over stiffly, and his voice, which had been so full of life and laughter, was becoming more and more like a musical box. He said very little, but he sang the same few songs over and over. It was clear that he wouldn't last very long. So Prince Otto went straight to the princess and persuaded her that a few days hunting, some brisk exercise in the forest, would do a little child a power of good. Furthermore, he said, Baron Stelgratz would come too. No harm would come to Florian in the Baron's company. So Prince Otto wrapped the little boy up well and set him on the sledge with Baron Stelgratz beside him, and off they set. But on the way through the forest, as darkness was fading, the sledge was attacked by wolves. Maddened by hunger, the great grey beasts poured out of the trees and sprang up at the horses. Prince Otto lashed his whip furiously, and the sledge leapt forwards, with the wolves tearing after. Prince Florian sat beside the Baron, gripping the side of the sledge, and watched fearfully as the wolf pack raced closer and closer. Baron Stelgratz emptied his rifle at the pack of leaping, slathering beasts, without deterring them in the least, and the sledge bumped and swayed from side to side on the rough track. At any moment they might crash, and then they would all perish. "Highness," cried the Baron, "there is only one thing to do, and I do it with all my heart." And the good old man threw himself off the sledge. To save his friends, he sacrificed himself. Instantly the wild wolves turned on him and tore him to pieces, and the sledge drove on into the silent forest, leaving the snarling, howling beasts far behind. And now, what could Prince Otto do? Drive on was the only answer. Drive on, and hope to find some lonely huntsman or woodcutter and compensate their family later on. But not a single human being came into view. Behind Prince Otto, the little child, wrapped in furs, was huddled alone on the bouncing seat of the sledge, stiffening, growing colder, changing back into a machine minute by minute. Occasionally the movement of the sledge would shake a little song out of him, but he spoke no more. And there's another box here with an illustration of them being attacked by the wolves in the forest. Lots of great shading in that. And it says the only thing to do when you're chased by wolves is to throw something tasty at them and hope you get away while they eat it. Baron Stelgratz knows this. He's just firing his last bullet. He knows that too. Okay, and I think we will stop there for this time. It's getting interesting now, isn't it? The plot's really starting to come together and thicken. So I hope that you enjoyed and that you join me next time for our reading. And in the meantime, I hope you carry on emailing me. I hope to see you around school if you're in school. Take care and look after yourselves and have fun.